Good. There we go. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another hour of good nature. I was just trying to decide the order of things, me and screen sharing, and I was trying to figure out what the best order to do things in might be. I think we'll start off with what's actually a not really late breaking news, but a kind of an interesting email I got just a little while ago. It was from a woman who is a good natured raider up in Crystal Lake. And she wrote the headline of the subject of the email says, this is a video I took in my front yard in Crystal Lake on January 11th, 2024, about 1:30 p.m. I have seen many V's of geese flying overhead through my 30-some years living here, but nothing like this. I'm hoping you can clear up my puzzlement on what is going on with these seemingly panicked migrating geese. I want you guys to take a look at it too and see if you can reach the same conclusion that I did. Hold on. Let's see, we're going to share. We want to definitely optimize for video, and here it is. Okay, I'm going to take it back to the beginning, and let's see if I can move this bar out of, well, I guess it's not in the way. Here we go. All right, let's stop that share. What do you think, good-natured people? And again, I think the audio is key here. Yep, the sound of sandhill cranes. Yes, so that's one of the things that I really regret not being able to share in the newspaper articles is the sounds that go along with so much of the nature that we see. This video, though, it actually reminded me of a field trip that we had done several, oh gosh, this is probably going back 10 years now, to Delnor Woods. It was a field trip we used to host for fourth graders in the primarily the St. Charles schools. It was called Forest Ecology. Delnor Woods is a great place to teach that. And this would have been in probably October. A flock of migrating sandhill cranes went overhead. And you guys know how these birds, they do fly in a V, and they make that so somewhat similar to geese in that respect, but they have those long legs that trail behind them. It was a little hard to see in this video. And when sometimes they're flying so high in the air, you can't see their bodies hardly at all, let alone whether their legs are trailing behind them or not. Well, anyway, this flock was flying overhead quite high, so high, in fact, that they were just little dots in the sky. But that distinctive, that rattling call, they call it the rattling bugle or the bugling rattle, something like that. Very distinctive sound of sandhills. The birds were making that as they flew over our little field trip group. Well, I said, oh, you guys, this is really cool. Listen to that sound. Those are sandhill cranes. Well, there was a dad who was chaperoning the group, and you got to love parent volunteers. We could not do field trips without them. But he starts debating about how there's no way you could possibly identify birds. Whoops, great roommates wanting to play right now. He said, there's no way that you can possibly identify birds when they're that high in the sky. You can barely see them. So that actually opened up a whole new opportunity to talk about birding by ear. So yeah, I did write the woman back, and but it actually sparked more questions in my head that I'll put out to you. I don't have any answers, but January 11th, granted, you know, we had a pretty mild winter up until that point. Birds that are leaving that late, and that number of birds, they could have been, you know, even pushing down into Illinois from Wisconsin. Are they even going to have time to go? My understanding is that birds in our area go down to Florida, but maybe they stop at places along the way. Will they make it to what, Tennessee, and then turn around and come back? I don't know what the future months hold for them, because they, you know, gosh, we usually start seeing them coming back through here when it hasn't fully warmed up yet. So just something to ponder, something to think about. I don't have any answers, but yeah, I don't know if any of you and local folks in this area heard or saw those cranes on that day. I know I did not, but looks like there was some significant movement amongst the cranes on that day. So let's see, there was that. Oh, and then I wanted to show you, this is a little update from the snail that we talked about a few weeks ago that my friend Peggy has came into her nature center out in DeKalb County. The snail, I wrote about it, it was about 2 weeks ago. The snail is now named Esther Duncan after my old neighbor, and because snails are hermaphrodites, so they are, you know, they have both male and female parts. So Esther and Duncan, while it was a female neighbor that I had, her name, you know, first name is female, last name is masculine. So anyway, Esther Duncan snail. I had just done some basic image searches and then a little bit of reading, and I really didn't have any truly solid feel for how to identify a snail. But as it turns out, the son of one of the members of our King County Certified Naturalist group, he did come through. He's a marine biology and estuary major. We're playing tug, by the way. If I get tugged off the couch, it's only because tech support puppies gotten very strong recently. So anyway, Stephen, the student is taken a class in snail identification. He actually put together this really cool tutorial in how to identify snails. It's a PDF, so again, it's something I need to share, so bear with me here a second and we will pull it up. Let's see, I'm going to just, why is it not showing here? Here we go, snail ID. Even called it Snail Identification of Esther Duncan Snail. So here we go. So this is what you need to look at for making an identification: the whorl count, the shell and body size, and the aperture size and shape. Now, some of these terms are, you know, you can probably imagine what they are, but he gets into much more detail here when we look at whorl count. So I have to admit, I'm kind of terrible at now wait, am I okay? I'm sharing the screen. You guys can all see it says whorl count, right? I'm terrible when it comes to counting. I have trouble with numbers in general, and even when I'm following a recipe, if it calls for like, you know, 3 tablespoons, after I've measured 2, I forget where I am and I have to kind of eyeball it. So counting is hard, but he has diagrammed it for us here. So this is just general information. can work on any snail, but you draw a line through the snail's shell, or if you're working on a picture of it, and you start counting the number of times your whorls bisect or cross that line. Once around that line would be one whorl, twice around the line would be two whorls, and so forth. Frankly, I even got confused by that diagram. So, and he probably anticipated that. His mom probably told him that I have trouble counting. So he diagrammed it out. And he used different colors so you can follow the counting. Here, he said, here's a demonstration of the two methods. He said for this particular kind, the side view is more accurate. So here he's got his line going through, and here you've got your tiny little 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4.5. This one I was a little confused by, but it gets better. Nope, 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 nope. I guess it doesn't. This is what I found to be the most helpful. I was thinking he had done this on the actual picture of Esther, but that must have been in the body of the email. So the red-green lines show 4.5 whorls for the shell of the species, okay? So then we get into this umbilicus, and I don't know if this is peristomy. We'll go with peristome. But that lip, and I have noticed when I've picked snails up that there is a pretty prominent lip, like on the snails that we see so much of at Fearsome Creek Fen. And then whether there's I would call this an indent, but umbilicus is a much better, much more scientific word for this part of the shell here. So he said that in reading descriptions, they're usually described as either closed, which this one is, or open. And then in this one, it says the umbilical opening is partially closed by the shell lip, but you can see it there. So some handy terms to keep in mind. And then here is the shell size. So this is how to measure, and I've always find it interesting how different things are measured. It's probably not surprising to you guys, now that I've confessed that I don't count very well. It's probably no surprise that I can't measure very well either. That whole measure twice, cut once, I measure like 17 times and I still end up making like 18 cuts. But different taxa, different types of animals have different units of measure. Actually, we were just talking about this at the Nature Center, how salamanders can sometimes, tiger salamander can sometimes be almost a foot long, but you never see measurements like that listed in field guides because you don't measure from the tip of the nose to the end of the tail. You measure from the tip of the nose or the snout to the vent or the cloaca. Because tails sometimes get broken or some gets missing for some reason or something tries to eat it. So tails oftentimes are excluded from an animal. Like snails don't have tails, but it does give, this diagram does give good instructions for how to measure these different types, different shapes of snails. This shape on the left here, that's the same shape as a little snail that I used to find all over my garage doors. When I used to sand my garage doors to apply marine varnish to them every year, they're cedar garage doors. And for a while I was using a spar varnish that I need to sand every year and reapply. Well, there were all these little tiny snails that looked just like this in the crevices of the garage door. I guess it means it gets kind of damp out there. But they were tiny. I would say that the height of the snail would have been less than uh, certainly less than a centimeter. I'm going to say like maybe 4 or 5 millimeters tops. They're tiny little things. But anyway, this is helpful information for how to measure. And this is where he shows how he came to Esther's um, identification. So here's where he actually took the pictures that I sent him and added these details. So here he counts her whorls. And again, going to that same point on that line through the snail, we have one whorl in green and then two whorls. The second whorl is in red. The third whorl is in green. The fourth whorl is in red. The fifth whorl doesn't quite make it all the way around. So this counts as 4½ whorls, which matches up. So cornuospersum, that's the scientific name for the European brown snail, which, yes, is the snail served as escargot. One that was imported, the snail, just in case you weren't with us a couple weeks ago when we talked about Esther Duncan's snail, she arrived in DeKalb County via a load of plants from California. California, there was a lot of this species of snail imported in the 1850s following the California gold rush, because this was a delicacy. It was a food that people, newly rich people, wanted to eat. They could afford it. They wanted to show people they could afford it. So of course, whenever you import large quantities of things from other areas, especially back then when they didn't have nearly the amount of checks and balances that we have today, these things escaped into the wild, and there are several pockets of populations of these snails in California. And that's how you count their whorls. So looking at the umbilicus now, see, knowing now what to look for, I'm going to see the next time I see Esther Duncan snail, I will try and take some other pictures to show these different parts. It says, while the image is uncertain, while Esther has emerged from her shell, the umbilicus appears to be merged with and sealed by the aperture of the shell, matching with the description of cornuospersum. And then I never gave him dimensions, but I did liken it to being about the size of a $50. And he said, since a $50 measures 30 millimeters, Esther would fall within the range of the size of the snail. And then the body dimensions, he said, using the shell size as a base, he would estimate that Esther could be in this range as well. So there we have it. Pretty much almost certain identification that here she is munching on her romaine lettuce, given the camera, the old eye here. Although from what I understand, snail vision isn't that great. They can see light and dark. I don't know that she even was aware we were taking her photo at that particular moment, or its photo at that their photo. I don't know, whatever the right pronoun is supposed to be. But he did say that cornuospersum also has a white or pale line extending from the tentacles to the base of the shell. And that looks to be what she has here. So he's got one more concluding slide here. So That's his best guess. I think it's a really good guess, even if it's not right. Just having this information, I think, is really helpful, and I'm looking forward to a time when we don't have snow and ice on the ground, so we can go out and practice a little bit with that sheet. If anybody would like that, just shoot me an email afterwards, and I'd be glad to forward it to you. That is the closest. Actually, I've tried to muddle through other snail ID instructions, but not knowing the terms, not having somebody to explain it the way Stephen did, I didn't get very far. But I thought this could open up a whole new door of fun things to identify. So if you want it, shoot me an email later. I'd be glad to send it out to you. All right, I'm going to stop this share. As that reminded me of another email that arrived this afternoon. And this is, again, if you're interested in it, let me know, and I'll be glad to forward you this link. This is from our friends over at the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, which is a collaboration between all or at least most of the public agencies that have land either on the Fox River or its tributaries. FREP meets monthly, and they oftentimes have really interesting programs. Well, for February 14th, their new network program is open to everybody because it's via Zoom. And it is a program called Bats of the Fox Valley with Tara Hohoff, who's the project coordinator at the Illinois Bat Conservation Program. I know it's Valentine's Day, but from noon to 1:30 on Wednesday, February 14th, if you would like to attend that program or dial in via Zoom, again, shoot me an email and I will gladly forward you this link. Okay, let's go back again here. All right, so from here, let's go to this week's nature news slides. All right. I guess that would be over here. Here's our Zoom. I guess, no, actually, I don't think this is Zoom. I think this is us capitalizing on what Zoom offers at our mandatory commercial for the St. Charles Park District. But let's go over here to our slides for today. So just a brief update. You again, if you tune in each week, you might recognize this particular feather. I took this picture right before I handed it over to you, Bob, so that could be taken down to the Field Museum and a proper identity assigned to it. January, if you work at a nature center, January is the time of year when you fill out all of the reports for the permits that you hold. There was a suspicion, a very strong suspicion, that this was a flight feather from an eagle. And the experts down at the Field Museum confirmed that. By the way, these are 1 foot or 12-inch floor tiles. So that gives you a good impression of just how big, how long that feather is. Well, you probably are or might be aware, unless you are a part of a registered Native American group or tribe, it's not really allowed for you to possess eagle feathers. So I told Bob that I wanted to just find out what the process is for turning in an eagle feather. So I contacted the office for our region for our federal bird part salvage permit, which is issued through the Fish and Wildlife Service. They're headquartered up in Minnesota. And they told us today that we need to contact the National Eagle Repository to ask if they want it. He said there is a chance that they might decline it, and if so, please incinerate or bury the feather, should that be the case. So the update is that we've forwarded this news of this feather to the repository, and we're on a wait list. We got the auto reply that they will return our message as soon as possible in the order it was received. So once we hear back from them, I'll let you know whether it will be on its way to the National Eagle and Wildlife Property Repository, which is in Commerce City, Colorado, or if we will be, kind of hate to incinerate it. I kind of like the idea of burying it. I don't know. We'll see. But there is a little bit of news with that, and I will certainly keep you posted as to what the next step is with what we've come to be calling the really big feather. So folks, I would love your impression of this. Well, not your impression, but your thoughts on this photo. This came in, actually this is from Maureen, the mother of Stephen, who is our snail identification expert. So this is the floor of a porch. It took me a while to figure out it looked like a wall, but I don't know if the email flipped it around or what. But what we're looking at is the floor of a porch in Batavia. And there's a Boy Scout who's been shoveling the walk of the person who lives at this house. And they saw all of this, what do we call it? Material, splatter, all of this stuff on the porch. And then also they said in front of the garage door. And they were wondering what it is. Now to me, it looks like bird droppings, but it looks like an unhealthy amount of bird droppings. My question back to Maureen, and I haven't heard back yet, is what is above this porch floor? Is there an opening or a gap or some kind of drop grid work, framework of some sort where birds can roost? Because this sort of thing doesn't just happen overnight. This looks like many nights. Or if this is a place, if this picture, I don't know the date that this picture was taken, but if it was taken during that severe cold spell, I could see birds sheltering in an area. I tell you, it doesn't really look that much different from the mess out on my deck when birds were coming in to drink at the bird bath and to keep scrubbing out the heated bird bath. And then there's all of this stuff in the snow and on the floor of the deck. This brownish color here, this is what happens when birds eat a lot of crab apples. And there's a lot of crab apples, at least in this neighborhood. There's a lot of crab apples that have been planted, not just in people's yards, but also by the city out on the parkway. So that would account for these sort of rust-colored splotches. This I think this might have been like maybe a table or something, maybe a table where the had a glass top or something that's now missing. But this sort of looks like bird deposit as well, maybe the whitish urate compounds from a bird or birds, many birds. And then this bluish, greenish, purplish stuff over here. This is what I've seen come out when birds are eating buckthorn. So that's my guess. Maureen was wondering if it might be something more than a bird, like some kind of mammal droppings, but I don't know of any mammals that will make splatters like this. Anyway, this this is the sort of stuff that comes into my inbox, and this is one of the reasons why I'm always behind on emails, because I'll spend too much time thinking or overthinking stuff like this. But I asked for some more information because I would love to know what the circumstances were that led to this. So if we hear anything back on what is above this situation here, I'll let you know. And I'd love, if any of you have thoughts on what we're looking at here too, I'd love to hear from you. Now this kind of relates to it, not the same neighborhood, but it is, so this is that street not too far from here. This is 8th Street in St. Charles, and it has the overhead utility lines. And I think perhaps because of that, the city has planted the parkway with mostly low-growing ornamental fruit trees, these crab apples. And if we can zoom in here, this has been robin and starling central for, well, I saw the robins there on New Year's Day singing away. And even in the cold, well, maybe especially because of the cold, they have been going and have been making a lot of trips to and from the shelter here in these evergreens, and then coming out here to feed. And look at now I've been walking because I go by here pretty much every day. I've been walking in the street because it's just a little safer. But look at the sidewalks just covered with the remains of the apples that have been fed upon from these trees here. So lots and lots of activity in these fruit trees, which frankly are probably one of the reasons why the robins have opted to stick around. We have supplied this food for them, and now they're making use of it. So I don't know if we ranted last week about the excessive salting. Conservation Foundation is doing a great job with their Salt Smart education. I might have mentioned that we were trying to, as part of the green team at the Park District, trying to share some of that information with our Park District coworkers, and we actually got booed. Our nature program supervisor got booed at our last all staff meeting, trying to share some of these tips. And it's not that we want people to be unsafe, but and this could have been an equipment malfunction. I don't know how they spread the salt here in downtown St. Charles, but this is right above the where the drain is. And the drains on our bridges go straight into the water. And chlorides, they're the kind of thing that when they're in the water, they might go into solution, they might dissolve, but they don't go away. They can actually become more concentrated over time as water evaporates and we go through a drought. And those chloride concentrations are going to increase. There's a lot of species that live in the Fox River that are sensitive to chloride. So I just hope that this practice of, or the thought that, and again, this I think was just a boo-boo, a whoopsie. It was a little more evenly spread out here and over here. This, by the way, this is the Illinois Bridge in downtown St. Charles, but I feel like I should be walking around with a broom and a dustpan to scrape some of this stuff up. Maybe I'll add that to the list of things I pick up when I'm walking around town. And speaking of things you see when you're walking around, so this was a very exciting find for me and the furry roommates. That's actually Kit. She's the senior dog here. She's the one that tends to eat our visual aids. We were walking, this was day before yesterday, and I could see this object laying in the sidewalk up ahead. My fear was that it was an opossum, all I could see from a distance was that it was this gray lump, but as we got closer, I could see that it is what remains of a bald-faced hornet's nest. And there wasn't much left inside. We did turn it over. I guess I didn't get a picture of that part. This is really just the paper covering, the comb part, where the larvae would be, where the food would be, wasn't there. I could see up in the tree where this was knocked down, but I couldn't really see very well what was left in the tree. So I don't know if this came down due to wind or due to an animal that was feeding on it. I was tempted to bring it home, but then I thought, my mode these days is not to add. My mode is to try and reduce some of the natural objects that I have around the house. But isn't this just a marvel? Look at how these layers are put together. Each one of these lines is wood fiber that an individual wasp, because bald-faced hornets are a type of paper wasp. They scraped it, they mixed it with saliva, and then they laid it out in these rows. You can see the variations here. There's light and dark. Sometimes you'll see, besides the grays, you'll see some browns. This one doesn't seem to have a whole lot of brown on it, maybe a little bit down here, but I think they are just so beautiful and thick. You can see here the number of layers of paper that go into protecting or creating that nest, which then protects the colony that's inside. These things, they not only stand up to precipitation, but well, this is kind of a bad example because it's laying on the ground now, but they also keep for the most part they can stand up to strong winds and stuff too. So I don't know the exact circumstances of how this ended up on the ground, but it's I just think they're such wondrous things. And Kit was pretty fond of it too. I had a hard time getting her to leave it alone so that we could continue on our walk. Okay, and this was another. I'm pretty sure this came down in the wind too. This was we had looked a couple weeks ago at a squirrel's nest that had fallen down at Hickory Knolls. Well, this is another one. This is over by Rocket Park. It fell out of, there's a kind of a medium-sized linden tree next to the sign bed. The sign for that park says Kehoe Park. And when we see a squirrel's nest up in the tree, we tend to see the leafiness of it. But it's really leaves and twigs combined. The squirrels are able to weave the twigs and the sticks together to make again, bad example because it's laying on the ground, but really skilled squirrels, they gain these, they have a certain amount of instinct, but then a lot of proper nest building comes with experience. They can weave these layers together of twigs and sticks, and the air pockets that are left between the leaves help form insulation from the outside temperatures, and then the twigs give the whole thing structure. There was a tutorial I had read. This was several years ago, but it was from a survival school, and it was talking about how you can use methods that wild animals use to survive in extreme conditions. You can put those principles together to help yourself should you find yourself without shelter, in a wooded area. You can layer leaves and twigs together to and then you dig yourself a little hole inside of it, and your body heat will be kind of trapped by the insulating qualities of those leaves and that airspace. It'll keep the cold air out. It'll keep the warm air in. It's supposed to work really well. I have yet to try it. When I was reading it, I remember thinking, wow, what about all the things that are already living in those leaves? Won't that be kind of uncomfortable? But I guess if it's a matter of life or death, you put those concerns to the side. But this nest, I walked beneath this nest for much of the last year. It caught my eye because it was a pretty good size nest. I kind of wonder if maybe the squirrels have moved on. They uh, Squirrels will usually have at least 2 nests that they live in. I don't think any squirrels were harmed when this nest came down. I suspect it fell during some of those winds that we had, and because it was unoccupied and unattended to. But let's see. Oh, and then all right. So this is our friend Corey, and this is a picture he put on Facebook. I don't know if we can. I guess we can zoom in a little bit here. It's not a super clear picture, and I know some of you might be Facebook friends with Corey, and you might have seen this post. These are great blue herons, and he just took this picture the other day. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 in this picture. I actually got a text today from one of our former nature program instructors, a woman named Miss Melinda. Some of you, I think, know her. And her question was, what's up? Let's see, where is it here? Is it normal for a great blue heron to be here at this time of year? So yes and no. There's what is normal these days, right? Well, squirrels, herons, we do think of herons as being migratory. We picture them wading in water, and when we have cold temperatures in winter, that water is frozen, so it would make sense that they would need to to migrate. But there's all kinds of variables with migration. Individuals might opt to not migrate because they just don't feel up to it. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're old. Migration is really taxing. But I think with some of our species, we were just talking about robins a little bit ago. We saw the sandhill cranes doing migration. The thing with our great blue herons, there's a relationship. So the other part of Corey's Facebook post was talking about an eagle's nest that he had been trying to find. Now, this is an area, it's north of St. Charles. And he'd been seeing eagles in an area, and he finally was able to track down where the nest was. And these herons were not too very far from that eagle's nest. So I've seen this at Starved Rock, and I've seen it at different areas along the Mississippi where eagles congregate to feed. A lot of times when the eagles, they have open water and they can have access to catching fish. They'll take those fish up into a tree, and then they just rip it apart. And as they're tearing into that fish, bits and pieces are falling to the ground. And that's where the herons come in. And that's where maybe foregoing a difficult migration can become possible, because the herons can just take advantage of what the eagles are dropping on the ground. So it's kind of a cool relationship. I haven't really. I think, to me anyway, it's just kind of a gee whiz thing. I'm sure if somebody wanted to research it further, there might be other parts to it. It'd be kind of interesting to know whether these birds are all related, or whether they're all of a similar age or similar health status, where they've all just decided to stick around and take advantage of the eagles' leftovers. But it was also, I thought, very exciting that we used to have to travel quite a ways to see eagles, to Starved Rock, to the Mississippi River. Who would have thought that not only do we have eagles on the Fox River, but now we have so many eagles that there are other species that are able to survive on their leftovers. How cool is that? Huh? All right, I think, let's see, is that the end of our, I think that might be the end of our slide. So I'm gonna stop the share. And let's see, we've got a couple more comments here. Anne said, if you take a nest inside, beware any insect will come out when it gets warm. Yes, I will remember that when I was still working back when I worked at Red Oak, and a regular visitor had come in. And this was probably around Thanksgiving or so, and they had cut a nest down, a hornet's nest down, and said that we could use it. We had what we called the touch table. The kids could touch anything they wanted on that table. So we set the hornet's nest out, without freezing it any farther, thinking that the cold temperatures we'd had were sufficient, and they weren't. Luckily, nobody got stung, but we did have quite a few private staff chuckles about, putting a hornet's nest on a touch table for a bunch of little kids, and having them say, "Oh yeah, experience nature up close and personal." So yes, that's a good point. And although, around here with this little munchkin kid who's snoring beside me here, she would probably learn the hard way too, that they're might be tasty, but they're also kind of stingy. Occupied cells, that they could still continue their development. Speaking of development, I actually have a little experiment going on in the kitchen right now. There's two different things going on. I debated about getting these guys out, but I don't want to risk waking them up. I've got a Ziploc, a gallon size Ziploc bag of pretty good sized beetle larvae. I can't remember if I mentioned that to you guys before. Ah, yes, I think I did. They're from the box elder they were cutting down at Fearson Creek Fen. As it gets to be closer to springtime, I think I will get them out so you guys can take a look at them, and then we'll see if we can't get them to form beetles like that. They'll form I guess you'd call it a cocoon. They pupate inside of an earthen ball that they kind of form out of the substrate that they've been feeding in. We'll save that for another time. But I also, so this week in our KCCN class, our King County Certified Naturalist class, we're going to be talking about insects and their life stages, and how there's either gradual metamorphosis, where the little nymph looks very similar to the adults. It might lack wings, but it'll just grow and grow and grow and grow until it, becomes an adult. Cicadas, we'll be talking a lot about cicadas this year. They have that form of metamorphosis. The grasshoppers and crickets, they go through what's called gradual metamorphosis. Our dragonflies and our damselflies have gradual metamorphosis. But then there's also what we call complete or entire metamorphosis, and that's where there's a larva, and then there's an egg, there's a larva, there's the pupa, and then there's the adult. That's what we see with our beetles, with our moths, with our butterflies, flies. There's a lot of insects that go through that complete metamorphosis. So I've got a whole dish full of mealworms in the kitchen. We purchase mealworms in huge bags. I don't know if it's 1,000 or 5,000. I don't know what the quantity is that we buy at Hickory Knolls, but I've got some, and I want to see if I can get some to start to pupate before class on Thursday. I've got them sitting on a heating pad to see if I can't maybe up the metabolism a little bit. There are several that look to be in their last stage or instar before they turn into an adult, before they turn into a pupa. So we'll see what's going on in there. And, you know, I mentioned cicadas. That reminds me, I was going to mention to you guys, don't believe all the hype. I've heard it 3 times already this week, and it's only Tuesday, that this is going to be the cicada apocalypse year, because both the 17-year cicadas and the 13-year cicadas are coming out at the same time. They're at the same time, but they're at opposite ends of the state, and there's a whole bunch of space in the middle where they don't meet. So I heard it on NBC, on ABC, and on WGN, that there must have been some kind of press release come out that Illinois is going to be inundated with cicadas. In certain areas, yeah, there will be a lot, but there's no way that those the 13-year brood and the 17-year brood are going to intersect, because there's too much state in between the two of them. Okay, I think that's all we had for you tonight, folks. Does anybody have any questions, anything for the good of the group? If not, I did need to mention too, we are taking, next week is a bye week. We are not meeting next week. Our next meeting will be whatever that first Tuesday is in February. That looks to be February the 6th. All right. So mark your calendars for that. Hope that you're able to come back and join us then. In the meantime, enjoy the coming warmth. I actually saw 50s, I think, at the end of the 10-day forecast. Incredible, considering we were at 0 and below just a week ago. So we'll see what the next round of weather brings us. See you not next week, but back here Tuesday, February 6th, everybody. Have a great couple of weeks. Take care.
Thanks, Pam.
Everybody.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Thank you.
Pam.
Bye, guys.